Welcome back to my channel. Today, I would like to show you how I made my mini Space Marine diorama. This is the first video of the whole series of videos that I called Mini Art Series. This piece was heavily inspired by my first small scatter terrain build for Warhammer 40K. It's 16 years old, and it has seen better times. That's why I decided to revisit the concept and build something new. That's the piece that I have created. I intended to seal it in a little acrylic box. Please keep in mind that this was my first video, so some of the shots may be a little blurry. If you want to see the whole process of how I made this base, please let me know in the comments. I used a styrofoam base that I cut to the shape using an X-Acto knife. Then I covered it all with Geek Gaming Scenics modeling compound. At the end, I covered everything with my sand mixture that I made using play sand mixed with Citadel sand. I have glued it to the base using PVA glue. To give it a 40K vibe, I've used some spare bits. When I found a bunch of chain swords, I thought it would be a perfect centerpiece for my build, but I wanted to give it a bit more character. That's why I added a damaged Space Marine helmet at the top. For that kind of build, you can use any type of bits that you have available and don't fear mixing and matching them, even if they are made from different materials. All beautiful things have to go through an ugly phase, like a caterpillar before it transforms into a butterfly. To cover the base, I used acrylic paint mixed with Mod Podge. That's the base coat that I always use for all of my terrain builds. Then I left it to dry. After it dried, it was time to do some dry brushing. I have used Corvus Black and Skavenblight Dinge. For application, I used a cheap makeup brush. At this point, I've decided to add another color to brighten everything up, as it was too dark. I used Storm Vermin Fur as my lightest dry brush. Then a great idea came to my head. I thought that I could use a slap chop technique to paint some of the small details on the base and my two main pieces, a chainsword and a helmet. To do that, I had to add another brighter grey colour, so I chose the Dawnstone. I dry brushed everything again using this paint, but this time I focused mostly on the raised areas. It was time to start painting all the details from the base. I'm not a golden demon painter. I always use the easiest and most effective painting technique for the task. I started painting with skulls and gun in a letter holster. I've used Skeleton Horde contrast paint for skulls and Gur Grunter Fur contrast paint for letter holster. After everything was dry, I dry brushed some Corax white on the skulls to brighten the most exposed parts. That will also help to smooth the transition between light and dark areas. I used an old dry brush. As I said before, I'm always using only the old brushes to work with my bases. Then I covered the skull with another layer of skeleton horde paint and waited for it to dry. I started to paint some worn letter effects on the gun holster. To do that, I used Mournfang Brown to highlight all holster edges. For this task, I'm using my good old Citadel fine detail brush. Then, I used the same color paint, and I started to paint small straight lines all the way around the holster in all places that could be worn or damaged. To make the worn leather effect more realistic, I had to highlight some of the previously painted lines using VX88 paint. This process is easier than it looks. Lines don't have to be perfect. More random lines with variable line lengths make this finish appear more natural. For the final highlight, I used Baler Brown. I've used the same technique as I did with VX88 paint. However, I drastically reduced the number of lines this time. This highlight should only show the deepest scratches, so we don't need too many of them. I painted the small part of the Chaos Space Marine backpack using black Templar contrast paint. Then I moved on to paint all the silver bits. For that, I used Lead Belcher base paint. After that, I used a Nuln oil shade and put it all over the silver bits that I had just painted. To paint gold, I used Retributor armor-based paint and carefully applied it to the piece. Then I shade the piece using Reichland Flesh Shade and wait till it's completely dry. After that, I moved on to dry brushing again. I started with all the silver bits and dry brushed them using Ironbreaker. To add more definition to the gold piece, I came back to the Retributor armor paint and used a medium layer brush to paint all the raised areas. Then I used Auric Armor Gold for the finest highlights on the golden piece. I used Abaddon Black to paint a small strip on the holster. After that, I used an Ironbreaker to paint a small skull on the holster. My final touch on the base was to apply a Nuln oil wash to all of the larger rocks. I have applied it heavily in the crevices to create a deeper shadow effect. Finally, it's time to paint the central piece. That's the 3 paints that I used to create a base for my slap chop. All of those paints were dry brushed over the chainsword and helmet, starting from the darkest paint all the way to the lightest. The technique that I used is exactly the same as the one that I used for my base. To create a base color, I used Ultramarine's blue contrast paint mixed with a drop of contrast medium technical paint. I'm usually adding a drop or 2 of medium to my paints. It appears to improve the paint consistency and flow. I have painted this purity seal using Agrax Earthshade as my base color. After it dried, I dry brushed it using Corax White. I also added some writing effect to the paper using Abaddon black paint. At this point, I have noticed that I lost all of the close-up painting footage due to the camera error. It was my first video for this channel, so that was a valuable lesson. I have fixed this problem, and I can promise you that it won't happen again in the future. If you are interested in watching the missing footage, I can try to recreate it and share it with you. Please let me know in the comment section below. To paint the lenses, I have used a brand new technique that I've never seen before. I base coat lenses with Corax White and then add a thin layer of technical paint blood for the blood god. The effect was more than pleasant, leaving the nice, not too bright, shiny lenses. Now it was time to put everything together. At this point, I've decided to create a small base for my acrylic cube. I made one using XPS foam. I've cut it into a desirable shape using a hot wire cutter, but an X-Acto knife would be good as well. Other parts needed to complete the build were a coin button battery holder and 2 miniature micro LEDs that I painted red using glass paint. Then I painted the base using the same paint mix that I used at the beginning of this video to base coat my diorama base. And now it's time for the final result. I chose to name my diorama as a little but significant touch-up, and the only thing that came to my mind was the quote, "Only in death does duty end." The back of the diorama still needs some work to be done. I've ordered all of the necessary parts, and I'll post a quick update video soon. I have sealed and secured my diorama name with a protective layer of Mod Podge. The battery pack is fully magnetized for easy access. The base is glued to the acrylic cube with a hot glue gun. Please stay with me until the end of this video. I have a special surprise for all of you, a short teaser of my next project. This time, I promise that my video will be complete. If you have any suggestions on how I can improve my videos, please leave me a comment in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking it and subscribing to my channel. That will help me deliver more content like this to you in the future. See you next time!